Okay, so let's get started. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the 10th annual Math Prize for Girls, a very exciting moment for us here today. My name is Ranu Boppana. I'm a Math Prize volunteer. I'm also an MIT alum and a physician. I'm going to be your moderator today. You're in for a real treat. You all have girls that are very talented and very brilliant and very good at math, but they're also very good at a lot of other things. And today we are actually going to have a conversation with 4 Math Prize alums. Some of them competed in our very early years, and they've now moved on from college, and they're doing very exciting things. So I think you're going to really enjoy hearing from them. So let's get started. Let me introduce them from my left to my right. Today we have Velina Kozareva. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. Velina received her undergraduate degree in biochemical engineering from Harvard in 2016, and she also minored in computer science. After graduating, she has remained here in the Boston area. She worked for a human genetics startup called GenePeaks, where she worked as a computational biologist, studying the relationship between small mutations and human disease. She currently works at the Broad Institute here at MIT. As a computational researcher, she's examining neural function and anatomy at single-cell resolution. If you know Velina, you also know she's quite the athlete. In her free time, she enjoys rock climbing, ultimate frisbee, and trying as many Cambridge local ice cream shops as possible. Next, we have Lillian. Lillian Zhang is a current junior at MIT. She's majoring in computer science. She has attended every Math Prize for Girls since her 10th grade. And she's been a wonderful cheerleader for us, letting us know how much she enjoyed it and what it's meant for her. She stays involved in the math community by organizing HMMT, which some of you may know as the Harvard-MIT Math Tournament, as well as events for the Undergraduate Society for Women in Math. Currently, her main interest is algorithms, and she's doing research on algorithms for genetic data, so you have a lot in common with Velina. And in her free time, she enjoys dancing. Next, we have Sophia Zhu. Sophia competed in Math Prize for Girls in 2009. And she says it was a highlight of her time growing up near Seattle, Washington. She graduated from Stanford in 2016 with a bachelor's degree in biology and a minor in chemistry. And she's currently a PhD student here at MIT. In her free time, this is what I said about many interests, she paddles with a local dragon boat team. I would love to see that someday. It's very interesting. That's a sport that she's joined because she wanted to, I think you have a lot in common with Velina. She wanted to exercise so she could eat whatever she wanted. And she's also in the process discovered a great community of people. And last but not least, we have Neha Dalal. Neha graduated from Harvard in 2016. She currently works in educational policy and advocacy in Washington, D.C. She has served as a staff economist at the White House Council for Economic Advisors, initially under President Obama and then under President Trump, on policy related to economic opportunity. Her experience also includes senior and founding roles at multiple nonprofits, volunteer teaching and mentoring in 7 countries. While at Harvard, she did quantitative education research with economist Raj Chetty and organized and represented youth in a variety of capacities. She was also editor-in-chief of the Harvard International Review. Neha has been recognized for her work in too many places for me to mention here. But among other honors, she's been vice chair of the UNESCO Youth Working Group, the U.S. National Commission, and the World Economic Forum Global Shaper. I mentioned that she graduated from Harvard in math, economics, and education, where, by the way, she was 16 when she was admitted. So I know that these girls sound incredibly, incredibly impressive, which they are, but I want you to know that this was a random sampling of Math Prize for Girls alum who happened to be here in the Boston area. So I could just as easily give you another 4, and they would be also amazing. So let's get started in hearing from these guys. And by the way, we're going to have an initial discussion. I'm going to ask a bunch of questions, and then we're also going to invite you guys to ask questions. We'll be passing around note cards. You can write your questions, and then you'll also get an opportunity to ask your questions. So my first question, we'll start with Velina, is why math? Who or what inspired you to learn math when you were younger? And what is your fondest math memory?
Oh, wow. So why math? I'll start with that because that's easy. My dad. Growing up, I think as young as 8 or 9 years old, actually probably even younger, my dad would give me like math problems and puzzles to work on. I think because he, as a child, really enjoyed them, and he was hoping that I would also enjoy them. Luckily for him, I did. So I wasn't terribly bored or frustrated by these, and I really enjoyed them. And from puzzles and problems, we moved on to competition math, which I then did until I graduated from high school. And I mean, my dad was really probably my biggest supporter, and also my coach at home. So he's the one who really got me started on that path. And then what was my fondest math memory? There's so many. I think getting to travel because of doing math competitions was one of my favorite things. So coming to MIT for Math Prize was great. Going to Texas for Math Counts was fun. Yeah, I don't know if I can pick a specific trip, but it was really enjoyable to get to leave my state and travel, sometimes alone. So that was it.
Okay. So for me, my interest in math began in seventh grade because, like, I guess our teacher just gave us a math competition, and I thought the problems were really cool, so I wanted to do more of them. And that was just how it started. And then I guess over time, I just did more problems, liked them even more, and just kept on doing them. Yeah. My fondest math memory would probably be, I guess it's like experience more than memory, but I founded my school's math club. And for me, that was like really an experience because it's just like, I guess it's kind of like having a kid because you like make it and you see it grow and develop and become better, and it's just amazing. Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm pretty similar to Velina in that I started doing math because of my mom. She has a PhD in math, but both her and my dad thought that like mathematical thinking and like logical thinking would be useful for me in later life, and I'm extremely thankful for this. Lost my train of thought. I guess I'll just skip to my fondest math memory, which is not entirely math related, but it's getting to meet all sorts of, or many people who were also passionate and interested in math and also smart, because growing up I was probably the only girl in my math club, and by traveling much like Lillian, I got to meet more girls who are interested in math, and I'm still in touch with many of them today.
Sounds like parents are a common trend. For me as well, my dad used to ask me, math riddles on the way to even going back to like preschool. And my older brother, who's now doing a PhD in math, he would join in on the fun. So you could say I was brainwashed from a very young age. But no, then afterwards, there's like a certain satisfaction to getting the problem and understanding it, and that was just so super addicting. And as far as my favorite math memory, I'm going to pick a couple summers. I spent a summer at the Ross Mathematics program and another summer at the Summer Institute for Mathematics at the University of Washington, and just getting to spend, a couple months, SIMU, exactly, with really fantastic friends who were crazy about the same totally uncool thing that I was also crazy about, and getting to immerse myself in that, it was really, really nice.
Okay, cool. So it sounds like, oftentimes it was a parent who, really opened this world for you and inspired you, or it could have been a teacher. And it also sounds like your interest in math opened up the world to other opportunities, to leadership opportunities, to seeing the world, to having, cool experiences. Since you guys have mentioned parents, parents in the audience always want to know, what do you recommend parents do or not do to encourage girls to study math and STEM?
Okay, I guess for this, maybe I'll present a little bit of a case study. I have a younger sister. And my dad, I think, took a very similar approach when we were young, in that he would give us math problems. And I really enjoyed them, and I ended up sticking with it because I liked it, not because I felt forced. And in my sister's case, she enjoyed them, but not as much. And she ended up kind of moving on to other interests. She now actually studies business as a college junior, and she's actually told me multiple times that what she learned when she was younger is still helping her today, having that kind of logical reasoning, quantitative background, even if it was only for a short time. And I think we're all very glad that my dad didn't push her to do the same things that I did, because then I think she would have maybe come to resent math instead of actually appreciating it for what it gave her. So that might be a good example of what to do. At the very least, don't push too hard if it's not a real interest.
I think that possibly the most important thing is not to set unreal expectations. Because I think I was really lucky that my parents were super supportive, and like when I did poorly, they like comforted me. When I did well, they congratulated me. But I had some friends whose parents are like, okay, this year you gotta achieve this, and then they like worked really hard, and when they failed, sometimes they failed, and their parents were really upset with them, and they were really upset with themselves. And like, I think that sometimes this isn't really something that you can just control or overcome with hard work. Like, there's some element of luck, and there's like in what problems you get, or like, and just having like such expectations like causes a lot of stress and might even cause poor performance, and like also might like cause someone to lose their interest in math. So
I'm, again, going to build on what Valina said and say to have patience, and I'm going to illustrate this by comparing my mom and my dad.
I'm sure they're going to love that.
Sorry, Dad. So my mom has experience as a college professor, so I guess she's more familiar in the ways of like leading someone to a conclusion and like helping someone to reach the conclusion that, this is the answer, or maybe I like doing this. And my dad was a little bit more forceful. So I appreciated that they were both more or less equal presences in my childhood, and in that way my mom, the way that she decided to lead me to math really stuck with me. So have patience.
You know, all the economics research shows that the single most important thing to anybody's success is how involved their parents are. So I think all of you guys, you know, you're willing to bring your daughters to this competition, willing to come here with them. So I think you're all probably doing a much better job and a fantastic job as it is. But I think echoing, you know, what my fellow panelists have said, recognizing differences between different siblings, being a cheerleader and not the one who gets down on your kid when they're already down, and emphasizing that, you know, math should be a path to happiness, and math should be something that they really enjoy, and make it, like, framing it in that context, and not something that takes away from any of that stuff.
Great advice from all of you. And by the way, there's also a lot of data that shows that it's really important to fail at something, right? Because when you fail at something, that's when you develop your skills to cope, to figure out what other resources you have, to figure out who you are, what you're made of. And many times girls get the message of, you know, that they should be perfect rather than brave. So that's really, you know, I think your advice is really spot on, that it's really important, you know, sometimes especially with math where there's a right answer and there's a wrong answer, we tend to be a little black and white in how we think about it, and we don't emphasize all the incredible skills that go into problem solving and creativity and, you know, all of those other things that are really important to develop. So great advice. So, you know, in that vein, actually, let me ask you, did you guys face any obstacles in your math or your college journey? And how did you persist and remain confident in the face of those? And this may be hard because I know they're all so naturally brilliant, but, you know, please try to think about what those obstacles were and how, you know, what you learned from that.
Let's see. I don't know if I would call myself naturally brilliant. There are certainly many obstacles. I mean, starting from math competitions when I was a kid to college, and even now in the jobs that I've had after college. I think everyone at some point has experienced failure or a struggle to succeed. Math competitions aren't easy. Math prize wasn't easy, and they take a lot of work. And there's certainly studying and practicing to be done. And sometimes it just doesn't work out. And so if you don't do as well as you'd like, and I certainly didn't do as well as I would have liked many times, it was very important to see it as kind of a stepping stone instead of the end. Like, oh, I didn't do well, I should quit math. No, it was important to not have that mindset. And sometimes you can forget that. So it's good to have supportive friends, parents, people who can be there to cheer you on and tell you no. You just have to keep going. There'll be more math competitions. There'll be other courses that you might do better in. Yeah, so that was an important thing to learn, and it was good to have support during those times.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to echo what Valina said. Forgive yourself, believe in yourself, and if it's something you want to do, try again.
Yeah.
Yes. I would say that when Lillian spoke earlier about not setting unrealistic expectations, For me, those unrealistic expectations came from myself. So when I failed and I got really down on myself, my parents were there to bring me back up again, to say that, you know, you can learn from this. You can always like live in the life and live in the past and say, I should have done this, I could have done this, I would have done better. But that's like not the way to live your life. It's, I did this, and this is how I'm going to learn from it. And for that, I continue to be very grateful to my parents.
So I remember in high school, you know, I got straight A's, and I remember showing my brother this, like my older brother, and be like, oh, look, this is great. And he was like, no, Neha, this is terrible. If you're getting straight A's, you're not pushing yourself enough. Like, you're not challenging yourself enough. You're playing it too safe. Go do something more interesting. And, you know, I think in college, I really pushed myself to be brave enough to fail and to set myself up for failure. And obviously that is really hard, learning to, you know, try again and pick yourself back up. But I think it's been the most important lesson that I've learned. And, you know, echoing my fellow panelists, like, it's something that really was something that I could do because I had very supportive parents, very supportive older brother, very supportive friends. And it's a scary thing, but it's the most important thing you can do, I think, being bold enough to fail and not bold enough to succeed necessarily.
That's very wise advice from all of you. Actually, it's taken me a very long time to learn that, you know, you have to celebrate the failures, because that means you really stretched yourself, you really pushed yourself out of your comfort zone. That's when you have a steep learning curve, right? And you're really gonna grow. So that's awesome. Okay, so let's change tracks a little bit. Let me ask you guys, how did you decide what college you were going to go to? And what advice would you give your younger self about navigating college? Actually, this is several questions in a row, so feel free to, you know, answer these extensively. And what college resources were most helpful to you in exploring your interests?
All right. So the first one was how to decide where to go for college, right? Let's see. So in my experience, I was deciding between Harvard and MIT. I had wanted to go to MIT since I was in middle school, probably. And I hadn't really thought very much about Harvard, but I applied. And then got into both. And I had really, even after I got into both, I still wanted to go to MIT. At the time, I was attending a math and science focused high school, and I felt, after visiting MIT, I felt that it would be very similar to the kind of high school environment I had gotten used to and that I enjoyed. I knew a lot of friends who were going to also start MIT the year I would, and it seemed like the natural thing to do. But after talking to students at both Harvard and MIT, after talking to my parents, talking to my friends, I started thinking about what it would be to do something different. To maybe push myself out of my comfort zone, as we've talked about doing, and go to a school where I would meet, or I could possibly meet more people with different perspectives and with different backgrounds, and immerse myself in an environment that would feel different from what I had experienced in high school. And in the end, I chose Harvard.
And then she met me at Harvard, and knew it was the right decision.
And now she's back at MIT, so you have the best of both worlds anyway.
Yes, and I will also say that is a choice that, in the end, may not. I don't know how significant it was in my life. It's impossible to say. I'm very happy with my choice, and I mean, I now work. I have the opportunity to work with students and professors at both Harvard and MIT. It is a very tight-knit community, so there are probably other college decisions that are harder. But I guess the moral of that story was to try to push yourself to experience or do something that might not be what you're most familiar with, or might not be your first choice. Okay, what was the second question?
Actually, why don't we answer that question around first, and then we'll move on.
Okay.
Okay, I actually have the opposite advice. This might just be like a personality difference. So when I was younger, I was very shy, and even today, it's difficult for me to interact with new people and make close friendships. So for me, it was definitely like MIT was the choice because it was a better fit. And I guess I also like understood MIT better because I came here year after year through Math Prize for Girls, and I really did like the community. So for me, like I guess getting through college, friends are really important because like this is your second home and your family's not around you, so your friends become your family. If I was at any other school, I am afraid that I might not have made the great friends that I have, and it might have been a lot more difficult for me to get through school. So MIT was definitely the right choice because it was where I fit and where I could find other people like me, that I could connect with, that could and we could like support each other. So for me, I think like at least if you're not very good at people, I guess you do want to find somewhere where you fit, so it's easier for you to make friends and find that like support.
So I'm going to introduce a new school to the mix. I was choosing between Stanford and MIT, and I guess going back to my answer to the last question where I said that I was putting unreasonable expectations on myself, I felt that the environment at Stanford would be a little bit more conducive to like being forgiving on that kind of like self-criticism. So that was one of the big reasons. And then the other big reason was I grew up in Seattle and I wanted to get out of the state, but I didn't want to go too far. So California was like just the right balance. So that was the fun reason.
Math Prize is 100% how I decided which college I wanted to go to. I'm not even kidding. So my junior year of high school, I came to Math Prize. And did the competition here at MIT, and then went to visit my brother, who was a freshman at Harvard at the time, at Harvard's campus. And for some reason that was surely not rational, I just fell in love with that campus and fell in love with everything about it. I went home and I was like, wait, I don't want to wait a year. So I decided to apply that year as a junior. I guess like what's the early deadline? Like a month after Math Prize, I applied pretty much.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I did not expect to get in. I got in. It was the only school I ever applied to. The decision was really easy.
Wow. And, look, I wish that we had 20, different students here and that they could tell you all about, many other amazing schools. This is not a total representation of all the amazing schools out there, just their experiences. So let's go to the second part of that question. Tell us a little bit about navigating college. What advice would you have to your younger self, and what college resources were most helpful for you in exploring your interests?
Yes, navigating college. College is tough. And for many reasons, not just because of academics. Certainly, hopefully you can go to a college where you can be challenged and be pushed to your limits, even if you weren't necessarily in high school. And in terms of resources that helped, I guess, both academically and in terms of, and for more, I guess, social and other kinds of learning that you do in college. I think talking to older students really helped me. So Harvard had a residential system where after your freshman year, you're put into these upperclassmen houses where you basically live in a space with juniors and seniors who have presumably already picked their major and have gone through some higher level classes. And most of them are very happy to give you advice. And so I try to talk with older students to learn more about their experiences, which courses they took, their thoughts on life after college or their expected paths after college. One of my big decisions during college was my major, and I spent some time trying to decide between a major that was more biologically focused or one that was more quantitative, say between applied math with a focus in biology versus biomedical engineering, which I eventually ended up picking. And so older students were very helpful in having those discussions. But luckily there are also many professors in these departments who are willing to have conversations with underclassmen, with younger students who weren't sure where they wanted to go. And so doing that was really good for me as well.
Yeah, I think I'd like to echo talking to people. And I think I'd also like to add that your friends also know a lot more than you might think that they know, because even though they're in the same year as you, you all do different things. So the path you tread might like fall into the path that they've already walked through. So that is like a resource. Also on campus, there are just so many clubs and like just so many events. Departments are also putting on events. So if like in terms of like what you want to do in the future, there are like so many ways to explore your major, because the departments are putting on events, relevant clubs are putting on your events, and like this, like I think if you think you might be interested in it and you're not too busy, this is definitely something that you should attend, because it can like open your horizons and introduce you to new things. And if like you walk into college knowing you're going to be some major and you never question it, that means like you really haven't explored your options. So I think that is like just like, I guess, going for the opportunities that are there. Yeah.
That really hit really close to home, because when so I did a program in biology the summer after my junior year of high school, and that was where I decided, you know what, I'm going to be a biologist, and like this is the path for me. So going to college, I do really wish that I had branched out and tried more things other than biology. Like I'm happy with where I am right now in life, but I feel there were so many things that, so many other opportunities that I could have had in college that I didn't take because I kind of stuck myself into the biologist track. And I would also agree to talk to people. College is hard. There are a lot of resources to help with that, that difficulty. It's just that I guess your daughters now are going to have to just like take the step to reach out to those resources. Like TAs are there to help you in the class. There are lots of health resources on campus, and like talking to your friends will also be a really great support.
I'm going to take a little different path with this question. I think my biggest piece of advice would be taking advantage of all the non-class opportunities college has to offer. I often describe college as a candy land, and that's really what it was for me. I ended up getting to learn Taekwondo and archery, travel to India, China, Dubai, Spain, and Italy, all for free. Run and organize like a publication that has readers in 100,000 readers in 150 countries. I got to meet prime ministers through like the Institute of Politics. Like there are just so many awesome opportunities outside of the classroom in college, so many great professors that you can get to know outside of the classroom through research and other ways. And you're really only there normally for about 4 years. And like, I don't think there's any other time in your daughter's lives when they're gonna have that many stuff that they can just do so easily. I mean, people are practically begging that you'll take advantage of these opportunities and, you know, just do that.
Absolutely. Great advice. You know, really your coursework is just the beginning. There's so many resources that most colleges have, so many talks, so many resources. You know, I'm just coming from an alumni conference here at MIT the past 2 days. We have all kinds of advisor hubs where you can connect with alumni. There's all kinds of programs out there where you can, branch out and see what else is out there. That's great. All right, so moving on, let me ask you, how did you choose your area of study? If you didn't choose math, how do you think math has shaped you? And if you have multiple interests, how did you decide which of those to focus on?
Okay, so I guess I alluded a little bit to this in my previous answer, but I did end up majoring in biomedical engineering, so not pure math. I would say that sometime in high school, I got really interested in biology, specifically genetics, and spent a few years, probably near the end of high school, wondering what I would study, or thinking about what I would study when I got to college. And I think for some reason, for a short period of time, I thought I would have to pick one or the other. But I realized shortly thereafter that I could actually combine my interests. And I didn't have to exclusively study one or the other. I could study biology in a quantitative way. I could pick up maybe other interests along the way. I actually started programming while I was in college. And that's where I started dabbling in computer science. And now I do a combination of all three, really. I now model systems in biology and then actually run experiments using computers. So I program and do things computationally. And having that opportunity, I think, has been really valuable for me because I haven't had to give up any of my interests, I would say. I get to work on really cool problems in biology and kind of approach them in a computational, quantitative way. So I really enjoy that.
Yeah, I'm a math with computer science major because I wasn't that good at anything else. So, yeah.
Sure, that's not true.
More seriously, I guess, so I did try exploring other things, and I attended this civil and environmental engineering event, and it was really cool. For a whole 3 hours afterwards, I thought I wanted to be civil and environmental engineering, and then I realized I'd missed math too much, so.
So as I said earlier, I got really excited by biology research in high school. And just being able to ask questions about how does the world around us work? How does the world inside of us work? And be able to address those questions at a quantitative level, and still be able to incorporate the logical thinking that I learned from spending so much time doing math competitions in high school was just really rewarding.
I was all over the place freshman year. I think I considered majoring in everything from math to government to biology to psychology to economics. And then my older brother, again, told me to sit down and list all the classes that I wanted to take and pick the major that required me to change the least number of them, which was honestly fantastic advice. I don't think people actually care what's on your diploma at the end of the day so much as the skills that you've learned. So I ended up doing a bachelor's and master's in applied math with focuses in economics and education. And from there on towards what I do right now, towards what I did at the White House, it's really been getting to use math to affect social issues that I really care about, because especially in the field of education, through data science, for the first time, we're actually able to answer a lot of the questions that we haven't been able to answer through now, and of course that's guided by math principles. And there's a surprising few number of quantitatively minded people in this area, so just being able to bring that to the table has been really awesome, and hopefully help shape how that goes.
Very cool. Yeah, really, math is the language, right, that allows you to understand so many other things. And I really like that many of you have done very interdisciplinary kind of studies, and at MIT they talk about that a lot, that a lot of the creativity is really at the intersection of a couple different fields, so very exciting. And by the way, guys, think about your questions. Maybe begin, have you gotten the index cards? And we should be passing those around. If you want to begin to write down your questions, you'll get a chance to ask some of them soon. So my next question is, obviously all four of you are heavy-duty academic. What do you do to balance your academic focus? What extracurricular activities or projects brought you the most joy or were the most meaningful for you?
Yeah, okay. So one thing I'll start by saying is that it can be very easy to get lost in your academics when you go to college. There's this big emphasis on grades a lot of the time, and you might feel like you can get consumed by your classes because there can be a lot of work. But it was very important for me to have kind of outlets for me to be able to de-stress and step away from that. And I got a lot of that through extracurriculars. Some of them were still kind of academically related, so I worked with a lot of research associations. I wrote for the research journal. I was later an editor for it. So it was kind of academic, but still a step away from my courses. And then I had several activities that were just completely extracurricular. So I actually did karate for 2 years while I was in college. And I'll say that being able to just hit stuff when you're upset about something, or feeling frustrated by your courses is really satisfying. I also played on the Ultimate Frisbee team, which was an extremely valuable experience because I got to have teammates and really connect with this community of girls who were passionate about something besides just academics. And they were a great support system. Even just leaving campus once in a while can be so helpful as a way to get away from your from academic stresses. And I think that's one thing that upperclassmen will tell underclassmen a lot is try to get off campus a bit more.
My most enjoyable activity would be dancing, but my most meaningful would probably be organizing the Harvard-MIT math tournament. I guess it's kind of like what I said about my math club, just like making something amazing happen is really cool, but the Harvard-MIT math club was like several orders of magnitude larger, so you impact more people, and it's just more like amazing when it comes together, I guess, or it's still coming together, so it's a work in progress. And I guess also just I had great experiences at Math Prize for Girls at the Harvard-MIT math tournament, and just being someone that makes amazing experiences happen is also just so cool. So, yeah.
So my two extracurriculars in undergrad were working in a research lab, which right now doesn't count as an extracurricular. That is my that's my education right now. And the other one was Dragon Boat. And for working in a research lab, it was extremely easy to find one at Stanford. All I had to do was send, I think it was one email, and he said, okay, come in, well, we'd love to have you. And just being in that research, that lab setting, helped convince me that, this is the lifestyle that I want. These are the kinds of people that I want to spend the next couple of decades working with. And Dragon Boat was also great. It was an athletic activity that I could just kind of, our coach's instruction was to leave the rest of your life off the boat, off the field, and just be present and in the moment. And that was really helpful to just take a step back from everything that I had going on, and just enjoy the company of these great people.
Like Valina, I like hitting things. I consider myself a ninja in training. I did Taekwondo in college, and I now continue to do Krav Maga pretty seriously. I told you about a lot of the other stuff I did in college as well. A lot of that kind of stuff continues. I think, like Lillian said, I really enjoy trying to create opportunities for others of my peers to be able to do the same sort of things that I have, and these things that you can do on scale. It's always exciting to be able to do something like that as well.
Cool. Great. Are you guys getting the index cards and the, Mimi, can you pass them out? Okay, great, they're coming. So now let me ask you guys, tell us a little bit about your Math Prize for Girls experience. When did you participate in it, and has the Math Prize community continued to be part of your life in any way?
Okay. Probably the hardest part of that is the year that I participated. I think I'm going to say it was 2011. And was it 2 years? Oh, man. We'll say at least 2011. Okay. And I think that was my first time really getting to walk around MIT. And I had never seen so many girls at a math competition before, which I think probably everyone might echo.
And what did that mean to you?
It was really cool to see that much representation. Because so often before that, girls had been the minority, or I'd been the only girl on the team. Probably everybody has at least one experience like that who is on this panel. So getting to have that experience was really great. And I remember talking to some of the other girls who were from different parts of the country, some of whom I still know now, and feeling kind of an instant connection, even though we had come from very different backgrounds, perhaps, living in very different states or parts of the country. And it showed me that it doesn't necessarily have to be that girls are the minority in this kind of realm. So it was very encouraging. And I'm really glad that the competition has continued to thrive and hopefully inspire other young girls and encourage them in the same way.
This is what Math Prize means to us? Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, so Math Prize for Girls was the first math competition I went to that was not me walk to school, write on paper, head for classes. So it was the first time I saw so many humans in math. And it was just, I think it was just so cool, like seeing so many people who are into what I was into, and also just like, I also really appreciated the fact that like the social experience was built in, because I could instantly make friends with a lot of people because we were both girls, because we were both interested in math. And it was just like, it was like really cool being able to meet so many people who were like in the same field as I was in. But also like following the competition, like I realized that like how much better some of these people were than me, but that was actually really inspiring, because it was like, wow, this is what someone can achieve, and then it made me like want to be better. And also it was just really cool, like, and like the people who are like, who I thought were so much better than me were like the people that I was just talking to like a day ago. So it was just like, I don't know, it's kind of like being friends with your role models. Yeah, so I guess for me, it really opened my eyes to like what the math community was like, and also, it also was a very cool thing that like there were so many girls in it too, because there weren't that many back in Toronto. Yeah, I guess I just really, it was just such a like eye-opening opportunity. It was like, it's like a new world. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I competed, or I attended Math Prize for Girls in the very first year, which, going off the 2018
It was
10-year
2009,
anniversary,
yeah.
2009.
Yeah,
Uh,
this
back-
is the 10th. This is the 10th competition, so yes.
This was back when it was held at NYU, and I had flown across the country and either wasn't aware of all of the group events or there weren't as many. So I'm really happy to see that there are so many girls like meeting and mingling and making friends in that kind of community.
Yeah, we didn't have games night in the first couple years, so you're right. Yeah.
3 things. So I attended in, I think, also 2011. We're going to go with that. So number 1, I already mentioned the whole college thing, but basically making a girl from Portland, Oregon feel like MIT or Harvard was a place that was familiar and a place that I could be. Second, kind of like Valina alluded to, being at a competition, a math competition, and not being the only girl for once. It's like the little things, right? Like you go to all these competitions and all the guys have their hotel room together and you're like all alone in your hotel room by yourself. And then I came here and I was like, wait, I actually get to share a room with someone. This is great. Like, it's like, you know, seeing other people like you and getting to have that community. And then the third thing is I met Mina Boppana through Math Prize, who became my best friend and college roommate. And a number of my other friends, like Valina, and a number of other people I met, you know, they're part of the Math Prize community. And having those familiar faces when you go to college and already having those connections and having that community was huge and very influential.
Great, thank you. So we're going to get to your questions very soon. Before we do, let me ask you guys a sort of serious question now. Do you think there are, and you've all talked about how amazing it was to see a room full of girls doing math, do you think there are particular challenges for women still today in becoming leaders in STEM? And what can we do about it as a society and a community?
Well, the short answer is yes. But I think, yes, there are still challenges. I will say that I think things have improved since I was younger, I believe. But I obviously can't speak for all women across all STEM fields. I think that because representation matters, it's important to, you know, as a young girl, to be able to see women in the kinds of positions that that typically have been occupied almost entirely by men, whether that's in STEM or in other fields, and that kind of representation hasn't completely, I guess, been fulfilled or transformed from the way it was when I was younger. I do think, like I said, that things have improved, and I think I'm very lucky to work in an environment in a city like Cambridge and Boston, where I think there's more representation than perhaps in other areas. And I'm very lucky to be able to work with many really accomplished women, biologists and scientists and mathematicians who are great examples and role models. And in order to I guess, stay on that trajectory and keep improving, I think it is important to have opportunities like Math Prize for Girls, and not just on a high school level, but on a college level and beyond, where young women can have these role models and examples of women in positions that they might want to have themselves, and in fields where they might want to pursue careers later.
I think that there are conscious and unconscious biases against women in STEM. And, like, given that, and given the fact that we currently don't see, and historically don't see many women in positions of leadership in STEM, it gets even harder for women to achieve these positions. And I don't know if this is like my unconscious stereotyping coming out, but I feel like girls are generally less confident than boys. So if like two people were of equal math ability and there was this opportunity, the guy would be like, yeah, I can totally do it, and do it. And then the girl would be like, I'm not sure if I'm like the best person for this. And they would like, and I guess this is something I've experienced. So like, sometimes I was like, I'm not sure if I'm the best person for this job, and I'd be hesitant to take it. And then like, it gets taken by someone who I think is even more not suited for it. So I think like it is really important for like, I think as parents, it is really important to like encourage your girls to like go for those opportunities, because I think that they can do it. It's just like, they just don't think they can. And like as girls take more leadership positions in STEM and they become more visible, like younger girls will see them and go like, oh, this is possible. Like there is like place for women in this, because otherwise they just like see a bunch of guys and they're like, can girls even do this? And I know this is true because I taught during my senior year of high school. I taught at the math tutor school that I was attending. And I noticed that in my class, there were like, the proportion of girls was much higher than usual. And after class, they did tell me like, oh, I didn't know if like I could actually do math because I just didn't see other girls doing math. But now I see you, and like you can do math and you've done so well. So now I think that I too can do math, and there's like hope for me, and I'm actually gonna try. So I think this is really important to like encourage girls to try. Yeah.
Absolutely.
My thoughts on this are maybe a little bit less directly addressable by this audience, but I feel that there is still some pushback against women leaders, period, in that women who are suited or like do have the personalities to take these positions are viewed as, rhymes with witch. But I think that what Valina and Lillian have said about having, like, encouraging girls to step up to these positions and, like, to have thick skins and know that they're going to get some pushback, but just, like, having confidence in themselves is going to do a lot for the vision, the view of women in leadership positions.
So this is actually a topic that I have written briefs for both Presidents Obama and Trump on, and what I told them was that there is very clear, strong, rigorous evidence that women are discriminated against in almost every single step of the workforce pipeline, particularly in STEM and particularly in leadership. There's a lot of evidence that shows that having a female professor or in the room or having a female CEO makes it far more likely that students pursue STEM fields, that students actually graduate with a STEM degree, or that employees actually get fair wages, respectively. And there are a lot of solutions, like at the policy level, but as far as like what we can do as individuals, I think the biggest thing is just calling it out when we see it, when we see this bias against women, whether that means, the Putnam had this ridiculous policy where you have to place a pink sticker on your exam. The Putnam is the biggest college math competition if you're a girl. But there's a lot of research that shows that calling attention to the fact that you're a minority before you take a test actually makes you do worse on the test. So calling that out when we see it, calling it out when Harvard did not have a tenured math faculty member for 6 years and just recently hired one in April of this year, but there's only one now. One female tenured math professor at Harvard. That's ridiculous. Like, where are women at Harvard actually going to go see mentors that, they can relate to? Organizing a competition like this where girls can come together and actually see other girls like them as well. And, just yesterday I was in a conversation with quite a few middle-aged men, and I remember one of them pulled me aside afterwards and was like, Neha, your voice is really high-pitched. It was sort of jarring in the conversation. And I was like, excuse me, I'm a girl. Like, this is ridiculous, yeah. So I called him out right there, and I think that's just what we need to keep doing, is calling it out whenever we see these biases and being advocates for ourselves and for our daughters and our mothers and our sisters and our friends. So.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Okay, so let me ask you my last question now, which is, what's next? What opportunities are you most excited about for the future?
Okay. So I guess my answer might not seem particularly exciting, because in reality what I'm most excited about is kind of getting to continue what I already do. What I most want to do with my career is just keep doing exciting research in biology. And so I guess my next step would be to go and get a PhD.
Can you tell us what you're doing research on?
Yes. So I work at a program at the Broad Institute called the Stanley Center, which actually focuses on psychiatric research, but from a genetic perspective. So because I work in a neuroscience lab, I don't personally do this, but there are a lot of brains in the lab, and not just the ones in our heads. We're a single cell lab, meaning that we do a lot of single cell sequencing on different kinds of brains, from mice, from humans, diseased and not diseased. And then I write software and algorithms to help analyze this large amount of data. So it can be hard to make sense of thousands to millions of data points with many different features. And so writing mathematical models to help simplify this process and help digest this data and put it into a more interpretable form is really important. It's something I'd like to keep working on. And so to do this, I would ideally continue research, maybe at the Broad, but maybe at a different university or program. And then from there, I don't know. I'll keep doing research for as long as there are interesting problems, and they don't seem to be running out anytime soon.
That is very exciting.
Yeah, I think now is a great time to be a math major or to like math, because like everyone needs someone who's good at math. So I guess like right now I'm like deciding between two paths, I guess. So I'm kind of interested in trading at Wall Street, because it's like, or the interview questions are very like probability based, and then like it's just like, I really like probability questions, but also it's like pretty fast paced, the markets always change, and it just is pretty interesting and fun. But also I'm interested in theoretical computer science, so I'm considering like doing more research in that and like maybe getting a PhD, and I think both of these sound pretty cool. I'm still figuring out what I want to do.
I am going to say Valina's answer again. For me, it's just stay the course, get my PhD, and that is in, I'm working in a plant biology lab, and we're looking at small molecules in non-model organism plants, which boils down to really looking at plants from the traditional medicine literature and trying to sort through this giant sea of like all sorts of reported treatments, and like finding the ones that actually will be able to be used and applied towards human medicine and improving human health. and it's just like staying this course of like asking the right questions to be able to help people and help improve people's health that I'm looking forward to doing for the next several decades.
My dream is achieving universal quality education and opportunity. Whether we're actually going to do that in our lifetime is a different question, but definitely something that I want to continue working towards. And in particular, I mentioned earlier that I think we're at a tipping point with education and opportunity where for the first time people are like, oh, hey, math and data science can help us actually, for the first time, understand what are the most important inputs and how do these inputs translate to outputs and allow us to, at scale, implement what's actually working and replace what's not working with what's actually working. So continuing to do that and continuing to, in my free time, do all sorts of other things from martial arts to supporting competitions like this in any way that I can, because it's really things like this that allow us to get to where we want to be.
Cool. I'm so glad we have these smart minds working on the big questions. It's wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to get to some of your questions now and then also open up the floor so you can ask directly some of your questions. So there's a number of questions here about your high school time. One question, and I'm going to put these two together, is about the role of the internet and social media. So how much time did you spend on your phone or your iPad on social media versus academic study? And then the corollary to that, were there internet resources that helped girls to feel connected and that were good resources?
So I might be a little bit out of my element, or maybe I guess I already dated myself. I didn't have a smartphone in high school. I had almost no forms of social media that I was active on. I think I had a Facebook. And I also went to a residential high school that had an internet cutoff at night. Of course, many of the students got around this cutoff because we were creative and we like our internet. And so sometimes I did as well, but it was almost never for social media purposes. And I'm really glad that that was my overall experience, because while I think that social media can be very beneficial, and I certainly have many more forms of social media now that I participate in, I think at the time it was enough that I was immersed in a residential high school and got to spend the majority of my time with my classmates and my friends in this environment, and I don't think that I would have gotten any additional benefit from having spending many more hours on Facebook than I did. I think in the end it was the balance that I think I really benefited from, and so any way that you can establish a balance in your life, I think you should try to do it.
You're probably not going to like the answer. I spent a lot of my time on the internet, but not on social media. I just liked reading fiction, and there were probably a couple hours every day. Yeah, I guess I was home alone, and homework can always take less time than it needs to. Yeah.
I feel the comparison is not completely fair between when I was in high school and with kids now. So I definitely had a couple of forms of social media, but the only way to get at it was on the common computer where my parents could look over my shoulder and say, stop. And they definitely thought that I spent too much time on the internet. And with my brother, who's 4 years younger than me, they also think that he spends too much time on the internet. But I would say there is a benefit of having social media, which was that I made a lot of friends in math camps, at math competitions, who I was able to and am still able to stay in touch with as we've like scattered across the United States, and we're able to like still keep those links. And I think that for me is what I get these days from social media.
Like Valina and Sophia said, yeah, I feel old. I think I started high school almost 9 years ago to the day. I did not have a smartphone. I did not have Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or Pinterest or any of these other things. That's not to say I didn't find ways to waste time. I did read a lot of fiction. I think I snuck flashlights to my bedroom and like would stay up late at night after my parents.
I
like,
don't
no,
know if that's
absolutely not."
wasting time.
Or, you know, as parents consider it wasting time sometimes, or at least, yeah. But my sister, she's a senior in high school right now, and I think that's definitely something that, you know, all of us ask ourselves, like, okay, when she's sitting in the corner over there, like, what on earth is she doing? We have no idea. But I think a lot of it is, it's almost inevitable, right? Because they're going to grow up and be adults, and I think all of us as adults also find ourselves on social media all the time, and sometimes I find it a little odd. You have all these examples of parents saying, kids get off social media, and then they're sitting there at the dining table, like on their own Twitter feeds, and I'm like, okay, like lead by example if that's what you actually want to say. So.
Sorry. I guess what I want to say is like there is kind of a dichotomy because there was the question about like, oh, is there any way for girls to connect, find like groups of people like them? And I think like the only way to do this is to like attend camps, make friends that are female, and then connect with them through social media. So like you do have to like spend time on social media if you want to like keep those connections and like keep in touch with the friends you've made. And in addition to this, like I think like your kids probably do know like what their priorities are, and so they will still like prioritize like I guess like eventually doing their homework before it's due. And I think this is like definitely a skill that they do have to learn before like they get off to college and they're like literally all by themselves. So yeah, I guess that's just something I wanted to add.
Yeah, I think we're all learning, right? How to do good time management in the face of, you know, all this connection. That's a good skill to have. But I also want to make a plug for Art of Problem Solving, AOPS. I don't know how many of you were on their forums, but I know that, you know, for many, you know, math kids, high school kids, it's a wonderful forum to chat, as well as find out about resources. And that leads me to the next question here, which was about summer camps when you were in high school. Did you attend any, and were they good experiences for you?
So I actually did not attend any, I guess any math summer camps while I was in high school. I did in middle school, and it was an amazing experience. I can't imagine that a high school summer camp would be any worse, so I would definitely recommend it. Yeah, it was such a great opportunity to meet other students who were interested in math and who were not just interested in math, but interested in competing and working on these kinds of interesting problems that you probably wouldn't encounter in your normal middle school or high school math classes. And I still have really vivid memories of the kind of mini classes that I took at the camps I did go to.
Feel free, by the way, to name the camps if you wish.
So I went to Math Path when I was in middle school, and yeah, the kinds of things we were learning there were so different from the typical algebra 2 or geometry or pre-calculus that was going on in high school, that it kind of gave me another new appreciation for math. It was like, wow, I already knew math was cool, but now it's really, really cool. So that was probably my favorite part of the math camps.
Yeah, I also don't think my experience is super relevant because I went to a bunch of Canadian math camps. But I guess I
We
did
may
have.
have some Canadians in the room as
Oh.
well, so feel free.
Oh, okay, sure. I think it's still not super relevant because they send you a thing in the mail or email and they go like, hey, you're invited, do you want to come or not? And you should definitely go if you can. But there's like one at York University for 9th graders. There's one at Carleton for 10th graders. There's one at U of T for 9th and 10th graders. Oh, this is only relevant for Canadians, sorry. Yeah, but there are like a bunch, and they're pretty fun. Oh, there's one at, I don't think it's very similar. There's one at Waterloo for like 11th graders. Yeah, so that's like the set, I guess. But I think like something that I do want to mention, it's like kind of an echo of what I said before, but I think you should like do things that you like rather than like you should do. So I also spent this one summer at this camp called Chad Valley, which is like known in Canada for like leadership and entrepreneurship. And like that wasn't like who I was, but it's who like my family kind of thought I should like aim to be. And it like I didn't dislike it, but it wasn't as fun as the math camps because I just couldn't connect with the people. They were interested in like leadership and entrepreneurship, and I just liked math. So yeah.
Even though you're involved in leadership, right, at HMMT, but yes.
The question was
About any summer camps or experiences that you would recommend?
I would recommend all three of the summer experiences that the summer camps that I went to. We both went to SIMU, the Summer Institute for Mathematics at the University of Washington, which I think at the time was restricted to people from the Pacific Northwest. I don't know if it still is. But the summer after, I went to a number theory camp called Promise with a Y over at Boston University. It was like a great introduction to this is what a this is what a college math course might be like. You're going to sit in a lecture. You're going to work together on problem sets, and that part was really fun. Because up until then, it was just me sitting at home doing my math homework in less time than it should have taken, as opposed to at Promise, where these are like open-ended questions. You can work with your friends for hours, and that was a great introduction to college. And then the summer after my junior year, I attended a science camp called Simons. It's a science program at Stony Brook University on Long Island, and they place you in research labs to expose high school students to research.
I mean, I already told you that SIMU and Ross were my favorite math experiences. Beyond what I already said, I think there's K through 12 and competition math, which is very different from theoretical and real world math. SIMU and Ross were really my first exposures to what math is, I guess, actually like once you graduate from high school. Ross, like Promise, it's a number theory math camp, so we started from the axioms and worked our way, like we self-proved things or reproved things, I guess, all the way up to like, RSA and all sorts of interesting stuff like that. SIMU, we had all these mini lectures on things from like the math of infinity to the math of Rubik's cubes. And it was my first exposure to how do you use math beyond competitions, and it was the best exposure, I think, to what I would actually be studying in college. And my brother's now doing a PhD, and that was also sparked by Ross. Ross is held in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio. So it's a 8-week residential math camp on number theory, and I think for those of you guys who don't know, there are a lot of online resources that list just like here are all the math summer camps and stuff, and I'm sure.
Yeah, so I was going to mention that, first of all, some other camps that maybe none of you went to. Another one is Hampshire College has a summer camp.
HCSSIM.
Yes, and then there's also
Camp USA
Math Camp USA, Canada Math Camp. And in terms of resources, we actually have, this is being recorded, by the way, and will be available on our website under resources. We also have recordings of all the previous programs. And I think one year we did, might have been 2011 or 2010, one of those years, we had Richard Russick from AOPS actually come in and list all the resources that are out there. So you can always go back to the website and watch that video if you'd like a listing of other resources. So we just have another 10 minutes or so. Can we open up the floor maybe and get some of your questions? Mimi, is Mimi here? Would you like to pass her on the microphone? Okay, here she comes.
Hi, this question is for Sophia. How do you use math in a plant biology lab?
So, I think my boss is pretty unique in the way that he hires his people. So I guess this is more relevant to the postdocs that he hires. But he tries to use basically every technique that's available to him to study his questions. So he has hired a computer scientist who basically developed the technique to compare mass spectrometry data between, like, say, two different spectra, and like get conclusions from that. There's a lot of, I guess, Valina, you might be more familiar with the RNA-seq side. There's a lot of statistics that have to go into analyzing the sequencing data that comes out of different plants, because we look for individual enzymes that have certain activities, and we look for that in the like the nucleotide sequences that exist inside a cell. So if we compare two different cells that we know have two different activities, we can be able to compare, look at the sequencing data and say, you know, maybe this sequence, which appears a lot here and doesn't appear as much here, is responsible for some of the activity that we see in this cell. Can you microphone? Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, and there's amazing research that's coming out of this kind of quantitative analysis. But maybe we can move on to the next question. This one up here.
I've met several girls this weekend who've attended Harvard, and a couple of you too. My daughter is in a pre-engineering track at her high school. She's a senior, and several counselors have told her not to explore Harvard as a school she would go to because she's interested in engineering, and people would just think she's applying there because of the name. So it's not even on her short list. Is there any advice you could give? I didn't really understand that. And I don't want her to miss out on a school she should be investigating and possibly
Yeah.
applying to.
I think the short answer to that is no, and I'm going to let you actually speak to them individually. We've got another question, a couple more questions over here.
So this question for any one of you who have done that. So did you participate in your high school any kind of science or math fair or any kind of research activity, and how did you pursue that one or find that or found that opportunity? So thank you.
Yeah, so just more broadly in high school, how did you find your opportunities if they were not necessarily at your school?
I did a lot of Googling, and when they weren't at my school and I heard about it from other friends, I was like, oh, we should do this at our school. And then I bothered high school teachers until they helped me do it.
This is, again, perhaps I was not the most motivated high school student, but my mom had big dreams for me, so she did a lot of the Googling, and I did the applying, and I guess places wanted me, so I went.
I was very fortunate in that I went to a high school that tried to really cultivate these, or like provide a lot of opportunities for their students in math and science. And I guess similar to Neha, when there wasn't something that seemed quite right, or if there was something more that I wanted, I would try to find it on the internet. And if it was accessible to me in some way, I would try and go, or bring it to my high school. But yes, I was very fortunate in that my high school already had research programs in place and really good opportunities for students interested in math and science.
And we've had, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna add, this is a little outdated at this point, but towards the end of high school, when I realized I'd accumulated all this knowledge on all these opportunities, I created a WordPress site that's probably still up there that has like a listing and also tips of like how to start one if you don't have it. So if you want to go there, it's nehaed.wordpress.com. But again, it's probably pretty outdated.
Okay, we'll send that out when we do the video. We'll list it under that. We actually had this debate the year that Richard Russick was here speaking about opportunities, and so again, I would point you to that video. He actually did a very nice discussion of the pros and cons of having a lot of resources. So on the one hand, having a lot of resources available to you allows you to explore a lot of different things, but he also made the case, I think he himself grew up in Arkansas at a place that didn't have a lot of resources, and he also thought that there was a lot of benefit to not having a lot of distractions and being able to really, go within yourself to figure out what it is that you really like to do and then seeking that out. So, I think that there are pros and cons to both opportunities. Okay, we've got 2 minutes left, maybe one last question, and then you can come up and speak with the panelists.
Yeah, one question for Lilian. When you join MIT, your classmates, boys, they're extremely smart. Do you feel pressure? If you feel it, how to balance yourself?
Yeah, actually,
I think your girls are really, your female classmates are also very smart.
That is true. Yeah, actually, when I was in high school, I guess a lot of my confidence came from being good at math. And then when I got to MIT, wow, there were so many people that were better than me. And I guess I didn't get over it until I talked to one of my friends that was better than me at math, and I realized that math doesn't define me, or intelligence doesn't define you. There are so many other things that you can be good at, and despite the fact that there are people that are better than me at math, I was still good at math, and there were many other things that I was good at. So there was more value in me than just my math ability or my intelligence. And I think that's something important to recognize, although it might take some time. Yeah.
And by the way, the incoming class to MIT this year, it's 49% women. And it has been, I believe, about that. This is the highest that it's ever been, but it's been above 45% for at least a decade. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much for your attention. Our panelists will remain here for a few more minutes if you want to come up and ask anything else.